Hello everyone, my name is Sahar. I am a part of the team at MAVlab and I'll be co-hosting the session today with Bonnie on behalf of my colleague Gemma, who is on a very well-deserved break after a very intense period of delivering some really amazing events at MAVlab. We are here at the November Innovation Talks event, which is the last one of a series of amazing talks that we've had this year, where learning builds belonging. MAVlab runs these talks monthly to spotlight amazing sector work and help scale up innovation. It pretty much acts like an innovation acupuncture, what we like to think of it. I would start by acknowledging that I am talking to you all from the land of Wurundjeri and Woiwurrung people, the traditional owners of country, and recognize their continuous connection to lands, waters, and community on which we are gathering here today. And I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to the Aboriginal elders and other communities who might be here with us today. Now I'll hand over to Bonnie Shaw, the Chief Innovator in Residence at MAVlab, who will facilitate today's discussion. Bonnie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sahar, and welcome everyone for the final innovation talk for MAVlab for 2025. This is our 10th session, and we're ending on a really great topic. This time tonight, we're going to be learning about how local councils are fostering early education engagement for culturally and linguistically diverse communities, COLD communities. Our topic is where learning builds belonging, and we'll explore how local councils are fostering early education engagement for culturally and linguistically diverse communities. Early childhood education isn't just about learning numbers, letters, and shapes. For COLD children, kindergarten often bridges cultures, it builds language and social confidence, and it nurtures belonging, which all support long-term well-being and community cohesion. Barriers to participation for culturally and linguistically diverse families often include complex enrolment processes, cultural differences in understanding kindergarten, language challenges, and unfamiliarity with available services. And speaking from my own experience as a native English speaker, navigating these processes without a language barrier is incredibly difficult. And so I only imagine how challenging that can be for others that don't have that access immediately. The COLD Outreach Initiative, funded by the Victorian Government's Department of Education, is delivered in partnership with the MAV, and it's helped over 6,000 culturally and linguistically diverse children access kindergarten across 26 councils in Victoria between March of 2021 and September of 2023. As the peak body for local government, MAV plays a coordination and capacity building role across the initiative. We have a team that supports councils by facilitating communities of practice, delivering training, sharing resources and best practice examples, and providing a platform for collaboration. MAV also works closely with the Department of Education to ensure councils are supported and that learning from the initiative are shared across the sector, which is a little bit of what we're trying to do today. I know there are a bunch of members of the MAV COLD kindergarten practice team here this afternoon. Can you give us a wave? Hello, G, you're still on the train? Ellie's in the office. Welcome, guys. If anyone is looking for more information about the program, you can discover more on the MAV website, which I believe the team will be sharing a link to, and also an email address where you can reach out directly. Now, tonight, we're going to hear some insights from some absolutely fabulous people who are working in 2 councils in Victoria. First, we'll hear from Tania Sangiorgio. I'm sorry, I completely lost my words. Tania Sangiorgio and Madeeha Khalil are kindergarten outreach officers from Merri-bek City Council who are going to share insights about their work. And then we'll hear from Grima, early years COLD outreach worker, who will share learnings from their work at Hobsons Bay City Council. So first, I'll hand over to our Merri-bek guests. I'll introduce Tania, who has over 27, I almost said 72. I'm losing my numbers as well. Tania has over 27 years of teaching experience as a kindergarten teacher in the early years sector. She absolutely loves working in the Cold Outreach Initiative space, where their team supports families and outreach to community. Tania speaks Italian and understands Spanish, supporting their Spanish and Argentinian communities enroll into kindergarten and school transition. Madeeha is originally from Pakistan and moved to Australia 17 years ago. She speaks Urdu, Hindi, and Punjabi. Drawing on her own experience as a mum new to Australia, Madeeha is passionate about supporting newly arrived cold families. She works to help them navigate local services, build connections, and feel a sense of belonging in their new community. I would love to introduce the two of you. Please take it away and share a little bit about the incredible work that you are both leading. And you are both on mute.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks
Thank
very
you so
much.
I'll share the slides.
Thank you, Madeeha.
And Tania, just quickly, I think the little block on your webcam has come across on your screen slightly.
Ellie, you will find that this is a mysterious glitch in Tania's computer today, and
I didn't notice it before.
We are going to take it as her being slightly mysterious.
Yes, thank you. We're from the Merri-bek City Council, so we have the presentation that myself and Madeeha will be sharing the slides. So thank you. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Wurrung people as traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waterways on which Merri-bek City Council stands. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend their respect to emerging leaders and to all First Nations communities who continue to contribute so significantly to the life of our area. Thank you. Our next slide, we'll just wait for our next slide, so it won't be a moment. So Merri-bek City Council is quite a small council area. We are located between 4 to 14 kilometres north of central Melbourne. So the suburbs include Brunswick, Coburg, Fawkner, Glenroy, Oak Park and Pascoe Vale. And the total residents are 171,357, and this is from the data that we received from the census, and the next census will be 2026. So it's projected that 2024 to 2034 that there will be an increase in births in the area. And we are anticipating by 2034 that it's expected to increase to 63,969. So we're looking at a big sort of growth in the next few years. So I'll go through the main points of the slides, where our main cultural and language diversity, 34.5% speak a language other than English at home. So we're very diverse in quite a range of different languages. And the top 10 languages are Arabic, Pashto, Urdu, Nepalese, Turkish Mandarin, Spanish, Vietnamese, Hindi, and Cantonese in those top 10. Then there are other languages as well, as in Italian and other sort of languages that have been here, second generation migration, but they're the top 10. So what we've seen in the early years development, there's 20% of children who are developmentally vulnerable in this domain, and the highest vulnerability that we have seen in the cohort of Merri-bek is between Fawkner, 43%, the suburb Fawkner, Glenroy, 34%, and Hadfield, 33%. So you can see in the map where the most vulnerability is where we work through. There's 81 early childhood education and care centres in Merri-bek, and as we said, we're seeing a forecast for increased demand, which will be for kindergarten places, will be like 917 by 2036. So we've got quite a few years to work on with the population growth that is expanding in Merri-bek. And a few key highlights about our program overview. So myself and Madeeha work in the space where we are proud to have supported many culturally, linguistically diverse families with a lot of various outreach activities. And a lot we do is pop-up events, story time, and obviously maximising kindergarten attendance by the CALD children and families. Children that are known to child protection, children from Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background, and children from the asylum seeker refugee families. Our promotion and raising awareness of early start kindergarten is very important, and successful transition supporting children starting school is another key element of what we do from 2025 to 2026, including those enrolment supports. And increasing engagement to the CALD community in accessing other resources. So our community engagement and family support, here you can see is our Glenroy Festival, which is very popular. Every year that we have attendance, so we participate in local events to engage these families and promote early childhood programs. As mentioned, hosted pop-up events and information sessions for children and families to encourage enrolments and school readiness discussions. We maintain weekly storytime presence at community hubs and libraries to support enrolments and family engagement. We link families through playgroups and also other childhood programs. And our main key aspect of what we do is a communication platform as well, which is a WhatsApp group that was devised from the team to to share information, which is very beneficial for our community, and we have strong partnership with community groups.
Thanks, Tania. I'll
Thank
take
you.
over from the next slide.
Thank you.
Changing. All right. So yeah, we were talking about partnerships and outreach. Here are a few outreach activities that we have sort of initiated since 2021. These activities highlight how the CALD outreach program engages families who may experience barriers navigating early childhood and school systems. We are promoting enrollments through newsletters, flyers, which help increase awareness of local services, especially for families who are newly arrived or unfamiliar with the available supports. One of our avenue is the WhatsApp group as well, because who sees emails these days, especially if you're not working. We also provide one-on-one assistance for different cultural groups and families, and it has been really valuable because we are providing personalized support that builds trust and ensures children transition smoothly into early learning programs and school environments. When I say that, we have connected one-on-one with families and cultural groups from Nepalese background, Pakistani background, Indian, Turkish, Arabic-speaking backgrounds. We get in touch with their leaders. We attend their staff meetings or we attend their events one-on-one. We also have done collaboration with Safe Steps, Salvo's Family Violence Team, Commission Housing Services, and we are ensuring that families experiencing vulnerability are linked to safe, culturally appropriate support networks. We are also participating in cultural events, like I mentioned, and Community Connector program, that is an initiative of Merri-bek City Council, where there are community connectors from all walks of life, speaking numerous languages, come together, just so that we can increase our visibility within those communities. So that we can also strengthen our partnership and create opportunities to engage families in a safe and familiar setting. We are also engaging with the Multicultural Settlement Network,
We are present there regularly in their meetings. We also go to service provider network meetings, teacher network meetings, and all of the PSFO network meetings as well, which improves collaboration across agencies and ensures coordinated support for CALD families. All right. So our next slide mentions our outreach to schools and allied health professionals and MCH. So our joint outreach with local schools and community organization allows families to experience smoother, more coordinated transition. It ensures no family falls through these service gaps and strengthens early identification of the needs. We are regularly on the monthly basis participating in communities of practice led by MAV, which keeps us connected to statewide best practices, which also helps us strengthen our approach and stay aligned with emerging policies and council initiatives. Our engagement in early years conference and early years leadership networks enhances our professional knowledge and builds capacity, allowing us to bring updated strategies and insights back to our community work. We have also collaborated with humanitarian organizations, neighborhood houses, and playgroups, which help us reach culturally diverse and vulnerable families who might not access mainstream services. These partnerships create welcoming, community-based entry points for support. These are some of our valuable stakeholders that we connect to on a regular basis, and we support families through these outreach initiatives that we've taken. So we are also, before I go to the case study, I would like to also mention that we are participating in local cultural events like Ballard Maroop Day, Reconciliation Week, Refugee Week, and other community-led gatherings, which helps build us trust with the CALD and Indigenous communities. It also increases program visibility in a culturally safe space where families feel comfortable and they're engaging and they're having a good time, and then we are there to support these families with enrollments and information. We also have our ongoing liaison with Enhanced Maternal and Child Health team, and that's where we get our referrals from mostly as well, which ensures families receive timely referrals to programs like Early Start Kindergarten and Early Intervention Services. We also participate in local immunization sessions and supported playgroups programs and provide informal but effective opportunities to meet families. We have also developed in-language resources, and we have access to free interpreters, which also reduces the language barrier and empowers families to understand enrollment processes, early learning pathways, and available supports. We're using our digital media platforms, such as Merri-bek WhatsApp group, which allows us to share the updates quickly with the families. Overall, these outreach activities strengthen relationship, enhance access to early childhood services, foster inclusion, which is very important, well-being, and smoother transition for children and families into the early childhood programs and schools. In the end, I would like to share a case study which is very close to my heart. This case study is about a huge family of 3 brothers who migrated from Pakistan. Initially, they were refugees from Afghanistan who were residing in Pakistan. They arrived in Australia with families and 14 children in between them. So this story reminds us why outreach is more than just enrollments. It's about meeting families at one of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. These 3 families arrived in Australia carrying the weight of displacement, uncertainty, and years spent in refugee camps. Many of the younger children were born with no access to proper health care or immunization. One of the child had a serious medical condition that had gone unidentified for years, and that broke my heart. And how I got to know it, that I was going through the documents for enrollment that the father had handled it to me. And when I was flipping through the pages, I saw a note written in Urdu from a doctor that mentioned that the child is suffering from some sort of a cancer. I initially didn't know what it was. I quickly Googled it, and then we actioned it, that what will be our first steps. So when I met the family, they were scared, very unsure who to trust, and navigating a completely new country while trying to keep their children safe. The family spoke Pashto and could speak Urdu as well, which was very good because I speak Urdu, and we could communicate in the same language. But communication wasn't just about language, it was about building safety, respect, and dignity. For these families, being understood in their own language meant that they could finally explain their fears and ask for help without hesitation. I sat with their women who were hesitant to talk to any other professional at that time, and we shared stories heart to heart. We researched and found out that RCH has a team of professionals who can support children from refugee background with health checks. So we promptly, for that particular child, we promptly made the contact and set up a meeting. We sent the referral that were not just paperwork, they were life-changing scenarios. By involving Royal Children Hospital Refugee Fellow and specialist, we ensured this child received urgent care, something the family had never experienced before. So we also helped connecting the family to the immunization team at Merri-bek City Council, who were very, very kind, and they organized special immunization sessions for these families closer to their homes. So they had their own special immunization sessions happening for these children. We also arranged GP visits who understood their language, and we also coordinated with MCH nurses who gave the parents a sense of relief, and started off with the CAS visits for the younger children. 3.5-year-old checkup was also done for this child and a cousin of him as well. Many told us that no one had ever guided them. Many of these brothers told us that no one had ever guided them this closely or explained the system step by step. So I'm glad we got in touch with them. The first kindergarten visit was incredibly emotional for the two cousins that we assisted to enroll. For children who had spent most of their life in instability, walking into a safe and welcoming learning environment was a monumental experience. The family shared that it was the first time that they felt that their children had a future that looked different from their past. Then connecting the families to English conversation classes and supported play groups was all about building the community, belonging, and giving parents a sense of empowerment. The outcomes in this case represent more than just services delivered. They represent a new beginning, a community opening its arms to families who have survived so much. This case study is a powerful reminder that every small action, every referral, every translated conversation, every visit can change the trajectory of a family's life. And a year later, I see all of these women and their children attend Faulkner Festa by themselves without the need of support of their husbands coming along. So they were getting independent and integrating into the community. I would like to share a little feedback from the family, which was given in Urdu, but I have translated it. The feedback is arriving in Australia was overwhelming and scary. The outreach team support and speaking our language made us feel understood and hopeful. Thanks to them, our children started kindergarten in a welcoming environment, and we got help with their medical care and vaccination. We are deeply grateful for their kindness and support. It has made a big difference in our new life. Thank you so much. And that's our details if anyone wants to take a picture of it.
Amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
What an extraordinary story. Thank you so much for sharing. It's made me feel quite emotional.
Yes.
Absolutely extraordinary work. It must be so rewarding to see the change in these families through the actions that you take. Yeah, amazing. The question I had is, I was sort of formulating a question about the impact that this work has in people's lives, but you've given an absolutely incredible example. I wonder if that is, you know, a very particular example, if there are other changes that you see maybe from people that aren't experiencing such extreme change in some of the other families that you work with. What are some of the impacts that you see in the children and in the families that you have the privilege to work with every day?
I think building their confidence, by going out and working with them. So we have a huge presence, as Madeeha was saying, with the Indonesian Nepalese community. So new migrants coming through, giving them the resources and the independence and confidence, then once meeting with us, building the trust with the kindergarten outreach team, and then letting us know, you know, where to be guided, you know, school transition, or once they've done the enrolment forms, you know, linking them into playgroups, supported playgroups or community playgroups. So it's a very holistic approach that we at Merri-bek like to view ourselves as working with, you know, these families, is taking each case individually. So, but that's what we've noticed with the families is doing a bit of an individualized approach to what they're going through. If they're newly arrived from another country, or if they're, you know, a vulnerable family, you know, with, you know, child protection, then it's another layer. So every family is different, but we try to do a very individualized approach. Madeeha, if you've got anything else, but that's how we sort of work, and getting our referrals through word of mouth, but also that presence within story times. And, you know, it's taken us, you know, 4 years to build that. You know, we're one of the first councils within the 8 that received the funding. So, you know, it didn't happen overnight. It's built over time. That people know us now. You know, the kindergarten teachers, you know to contact us. You know, there's other stakeholders. So it's a very much a collaborative approach that we foster at Merri-bek.
Yeah, and we are aware of the fact as well that we are here to empower the professionals as well. So it's about building that capacity for our stakeholders and our professionals in case this program ends for Merri-bek, who knows. So yeah, building that capacity of the professionals and stakeholders is so important, because we want every family and every stakeholder and every partner that we have made along these through 4 years have that capability and confidence to support every family, because this will not stop. This will continue to grow and grow. Early years is continuing to grow and grow more, and we want a safe and a culturally appropriate space to be created for everyone in every space.
Yeah, amazing. It's really interesting. We ran a session 2 weeks ago. The 2 sessions ago, and had someone from the city of Wyndham speaking about an outreach program they run with people that are elderly, and connecting them with services. And they spoke in a similar way about stitching people to kind of into the services they need in a really individualized, focused way that really responded to their personal needs. And I think a lot of time when people think about government, they think about these kind of big macro solutions that are very impersonal. And you and our other colleagues are showing us that so much of the really good work that's happening is really personalized and really about individuals and families, and has so much impact. Thank you. I'm going to hand over the mic to our next speaker. Jo is an early years outreach worker at Hobsons Bay City Council, And Jo brings almost 4 decades of experience working with culturally and linguistically diverse families across early years services and community development. As a migrant herself, Jo offers not only professional expertise, but also valuable lived experience, enriching her approach to outreach and engagement. Jo, can I hand you the mic?
Thank you. I'll just share my slide. Sorry.
And thank you for the beautiful background. It's a lovely, energizing.
Sorry,
thing.
I'm having problems finding it at the moment. I don't know why. Here we are.
And just before you start, Jo, I might ask if people in the group have questions for any of the speakers tonight, please either get them ready or throw them in the chat, and we'll open up for a big discussion after Jo's session.
Yeah, just checking you can see my slides.
Perfect. Take it away.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So yes, I'm Jo Grima. I'm the early years called outreach worker at Hobsons Bay. So I've been in the role since February 2023. Hobsons Bay got funding in late 2022, and I was successful in the position, which I was really pleased about. And so I started in February 2023. So I'm losing my voice a little bit. I'm really lucky because I actually not only work in Hobsons Bay, but I live in Hobsons Bay. So I'm actually working for my own community. As part of my presentation today, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to do a welcome to country first, but I'm going to do talk about a little bit about who our community is, and then I'm going to talk about the role, the called outreach role, and I've got a case study to present, which is probably one of my more complex case studies. It's been an interesting ongoing one. So I'm going to share a brief summary of it today because it's so big that I had to sort of summarise some aspects of it. So but before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and the waterways in Hobsons Bay, which is the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nations. I'd like to pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. So as you can see from my slide here, that Hobsons Bay is actually not a large LGA, and you can see some of the grey areas there, which are industrial areas. So we're actually almost surrounded by an industrial ring, but we've got quite a diverse suburb, and we're obviously right on the bay. So we've got some amazing, wonderful natural features, but we've also got quite a diverse community. So if you have a look a little bit, so these are the stats. The most recent ones I had was from 2023 around the population, but we're only a population of 93,738. And we've got a large older population, and that's because the suburb, during the 60s, 50s, 60s and 70s was a high sort of migrant population as well. But there was a lot of settlements from European settlements, and there was a lot of people that sort of came into the area around those time when a lot of the housing was being developed. So a lot of those people are now sort of getting a little bit older, and so we've got a large portion of older people here as well. Hobsons Bay has the lower portion of younger people, so 12 to 34 years, but I'll show you some more stats around. If you have a look at some of the stats from the 0 to 4 for Hobsons Bay, we're a growing preschool community as well. And the suburb is actually changing. So there's a lot of subdivision because there's a lot of large blocks. So there's a lot of new families moving into the area. It's expected that about 11,000 residents will be moving into the area in the next 10 years, and you can see the changes that are happening with higher denser living here. And the reason why I think, it's really important, I think when I first came into this role, it was really important for me to understand this community, because the role is very much about community. And so understanding the community that we're working for is been really critical. So who's in this community? And I'm going to talk a little bit about vulnerability. So we obviously have a small portion of First Nation people in this community. And the interesting part about that is we're seeing a rise in the number of people identifying as Aboriginal First Nation people. I think I'll talk a little bit about that as well later, because we've got some early years reforms, and for us, that's had an impact around the number of families that have chosen to identify as Aboriginal. There's about a quarter of the residents speak a language, 27% speak a language other than English at home, so compared to 34% of Greater Melbourne. And the top 3 languages here are Arabic, Greek, and Vietnamese. But we've also got a growing Spanish-speaking community, Indian community here, which are both Punjabi and Hindi, and Indonesian communities here. So we've got new communities coming through. A total of about 3,744 residents have difficulty speaking English. And we see that in the work that we're doing with the community, and a total of 30% were born overseas, so as compared to 36% of Greater Melbourne. And the top 3 countries of birth, other than Australia, are the United Kingdom, India, and New Zealand. So we have pockets of higher vulnerability in Hobsons Bay, and they're areas like Altona Meadows, Altona North, and Laverton. So that's where we see a lot of our disadvantage. And a lot of my work is in those areas, but we also have pockets of public housing. So Williamstown as an area where there's public housing. So while it's a higher socioeconomic area, there are pockets of vulnerability in Williamstown, and some of our most vulnerable families live in those public housing estates, and theirs is a high-rise estates there. So I do quite a lot of work in those areas. And you can see where, the weekly median household income in Hobsons Bay is quite high, so it's 1,972, but that's because we've got areas of higher wealth as compared, but other areas that have got lower socioeconomic, like Laverton, for instance, but the highest is actually in Newport West. So some areas are quite gentrified now, whereas other areas are still very, very vulnerable. Social determinants of health, and this is really important because I think some of this is also reflected in the work that I do, and it comes out around some of those barriers to access. So obviously prenatal and early childhood, transport, food security, social community and family connections, education and lifelong learning, health services, employment, safety, obviously the natural environments, income and housing. So around 1 in 6 children in Hobsons Bay are vulnerable at one or more key developmental areas, for example, language, emotional maturity, cognitive. Suburbs where children are more likely to be developmentally vulnerable include Altona Meadows, Altona North, Brooklyn and South Kingsville. In the Western Melbourne region, Hobsons Bay 30 to 32% had higher proportion of infants being breastfed to 6 months, but more recently I think some of that data has actually gone down, so the rates are sort of gone down. Immunisation rates were generally quite high, but we've seen a decrease in that, and we're seeing that in some of the families coming through to register for kinder, and there's been a decline in the percentage of 2-year-olds obviously there, so we were immunised, so we're seeing a bit of a decline right across. So that's a bit concerning for us, and it poses some challenges when we're looking at transition to kinder, because it does create some barriers. I just want to show this briefly, but this is the projected 3-year-old kindergarten enrolments, and you can see it's sort of rising, and then the 4-year-old enrolments is also sort of rising over the next few years. I mean, in a landlocked suburb like Hobsons Bay or LGA like Hobsons Bay, that'll pose some challenges in particular areas, which we're very aware of, and some of that's starting to be evident now in particular areas like Williamstown, for instance. So we've got 33 services delivering funded kinder in Hobsons Bay, including long day care services. My work is, it's interesting, so in the sense that it's so diverse, and I'm just going to present a bit of a picture around some of the aspects of my work that I do. And obviously, you know, I help with kindergarten enrolments. I do a lot of work with helping families access long daycare services as well, but also understanding fees, because kindergarten, integrated kindergarten for a lot of families is requires that they pay additional fees, and often parents see free kinder and will enrol in kinder in long daycare and are then quite shocked around the fees that they might incur. So, you know, I do quite a lot of work in helping parents understand the difference between sessional and long day, and what integrated kinder means, and accessing childcare subsidy. So linking families with community service supports in the local area, that's really critical, because families often come with complex needs. So linking them to additional services to address some of the barriers to access has been really critical. We promote kindergarten, promote 3 and 4-year-old kindergarten and support transition to school. Assist families to make informed decisions of when to send their children to kinder. We have a lot of families wanting to enrol children quite early. So in that children that are turning 3 between the January, April, sometimes the children are not quite ready, and parents don't often understand that, you know, once they start that 3-year-old kinder, they're going on to 4-year-old, and sort of helping parents to think about when they're wanting to send children to school. They're sending children too early, then looking at, you know, eligibility for a second year of 3-year-old or 4-year-old, it might not necessarily, the children might not qualify for that, so might not meet the criteria. So, you know, we help parents to make really informed decisions about, you know, when's the right time to send their children to kinder and when's the right time to send their children to school, especially if the birthday falls within the January, April period. Support families quite a lot with navigating systems such as NDIS, Early Childhood Intervention Services, Centrelink, and, you know, sort of other sort of systems, like sometimes sort of kindergarten registration, all of those. So work with, I've done a lot of work with Outreach MCH, and I worked with the Maternal and Child Health Service here to reactivate Outreach MCH, and that's currently where the nurse is actually attending childcare centres and kindergartens to do the 3.5-year-old checks for children that are eligible if parents give consent, and she's able to actually go out there and do those checks with the children, and then really flag concerns with the parents. And I worked on that with the nurse, and I promote it with the kinders, and we visit the kindergartens and the childcare centres together. And then part of that role is also around circling back to do preschool field officer referrals, and to, you know, possibly other referrals as well. So it's a real partnership. Organising, obviously, interpreter services for families when needed. Plan and implement community outreach activities. And this is a really critical part of the role. And I don't just attend existing activities. We do a lot of partnerships with our libraries team, our sustainability team, our early years team, our MCH, to actually plan activities. And one of the reasons we do that is often, and playgroups, I can't forget about playgroups because they've been really critical. One of the reasons we do that is when parents are already engaged in services, it's easier for us to engage, but we want to really engage parents that are not accessing any services. So we worked out quite early that in order to do that, we had to actually facilitate activities within the local community to attract families to those events, and then to start engaging them, and to promote kinder, to promote playgroup, to promote maternal and child health, and to promote other services that might be in the local area. I work in partnership with early years services and community groups to engage called families whose children are not attending kindergarten on a regular basis. So part of that is sometimes in particular areas, particular kindergartens, children disengage with kinder really early. and for a number of different reasons, some of them cultural. So it's really working in partnerships with those services to re-engage the families, to promote the importance of kindergarten, but to also work with community leaders and community groups to reiterate and to enforce, well, not enforce, probably that to reinforce the importance of kindergarten and the benefits for children to attend 2 years of kindergarten before they go to school. So often that takes quite a lot of work, and we have to really build trust and relationships with families, and to really help them understand why kindergarten is important. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we do. All of this is really ongoing. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that families face when enrolling in kindergarten and accessing kindergarten. And working with called communities, and one of the things that we find that our community really have challenges with is online access, online enrolments. It's not just our called communities, it's our most disadvantaged communities. You know, often families don't have access to internet, they don't have access to laptops. They are trying to do enrolments on phones, they don't have English skills. And so, you know, encouraging services to use paper-based as well as online forms is really critical. And I often use paper-based forms when I'm doing enrolments with families, both kindergarten registration and kindergarten enrolments, because it's easier to have those conversations. If I can't, then I'll often have to do it on my own computer, on my own laptop, to actually get that registration sort of and that enrolment happening. Navigating systems like Centrelink, NDIS, early childhood information, early childhood intervention services is really critical. And so often for parents who need to access integrated kinder, they can't access Centrelink and childcare subsidy, they can't access that. NDIS for early intervention services, really critical. If they don't have the right visa, we have to actually work with NDIS, and when we do an NDIS assessment, we often write on the form that this child, these parents don't have a permanent visa, so can you please refer to the early childhood intervention services? So really advocating for parents to keep things moving along and for them to keep you know, on that path to accessing services as quickly as possible. Financial access to timely and affordable diagnosis for children with additional needs, massive barrier for families and for children, especially accessing schools and accessing special schools. It's a huge challenge for us, especially if they not just because of the affordability, but it's just accessing the allied health services. There's long waiting lists. You know, sometimes it could take up to 2 years for us to actually get a diagnosis in place, to put services in place. Financial hardship, housing insecurity, and food insecurity are massive with the families that we work with. And often when I'm doing kindergarten registration, I'm doing, you know, assessments around their other needs. And so we're linking them into a whole range of different services which help with them accessing, you know, addressing some of the barriers that they have. The food, accessing food programs, referrals to housing, and looking at sort of referrals to maybe get vouchers for clothing and things like that, and with constant referrals to aid agencies. Family violence is massive, and families fleeing violence. I do a lot of work with women who are escaping family violence, so working with agencies that are supporting them, ensuring, you know, that there's safety plans in place, helping them to access kinder, but ensuring that their safety is priority. So working with the early years services to ensure that they're aware of, you know, any intervention orders, access a whole range of safety issues that might be in place. Trauma is a massive barrier for both families and children. We're often dealing with children with quite severe behavioural issues, which can be really challenging for the early years services that they're working with. and often the parents themselves have quite significant trauma as well. So that can be really challenging in trying to progress interventions for them. And there's a lot of suspicion often around interventions actually coming in, and also around discussing some of their issues. Child protection and out-of-home care arrangements can be a challenge and a massive barrier to accessing kindergarten. Accessibility and isolation. We have a lot of parents that do not drive, and so if we can't access a kindergarten place in a particular LGA particular suburb, then that means that that child can't go to kinder. We work really hard to try and ensure that those children get a place, but sometimes it can be really challenging. Language and literacy is obviously always an issue when we're working with called families, when we talk about barriers, and visa classification and entitlements. So we work with a lot of families that have bridging visas, student visas, that can't access services, that can't access healthcare, that can't access school, that can't afford to send their children to school. And the case study I'm about to talk about is going to sort of encompass a whole range of these. I just want to talk a little bit about what works well and what doesn't, what works well. So for us, really...
Jo, sorry, can I just jump in? We've got about 10 minutes left.
Yep.
In the session. So if you can, I want to make sure that we've got enough time to hear the case study and have a little bit of time for questions.
Sure. I'll go into the case study. So I just want to, so this was a 3-year-old child that was registered for kinder, and it was flagged early because the parents' names or the carers' names didn't match the birth certificate. So it was referred to me, and I ended up meeting with the family via an interpreter. So we had some concerns because we're obviously worried about child protection issues and possibly some safety issues. This is a really complex case because there's some levels of complexity here. So the biological parents, after meeting with the family, we determined that the carers were not, didn't have legal custody of the child. And we determined that what had happened with the child was that the biological parents had arrived in Australia, were in rural Victoria, they were on a tourist visa, and but then soon after the child was born, the parents actually gave the child over, or the mother gave the child over to a family friend, and then both parents ended up disappearing. So the family friends had the child since the child was an infant, and the child at this time when we picked it up was 4 years old. So some of the challenges with this case was that there was no legal custody of the child, so we couldn't actually do a kindergarten registration. The child had not been registered with the Department of Home Affairs, so it didn't have a legal status in Australia. The biological parents' immigration status was unknown, so as the child didn't have a valid visa, but we... obviously, the carers didn't have a Medicare card for the child, so there was they couldn't afford to pay for medical aid. The child had some medical conditions, and because of the child's visa status, she couldn't access medical doctors, and she wasn't eligible for, obviously, then at that time, some NDIS and some school funding. So the case, we had to do some really quick referrals. So I ended up doing a referral to the Orange Door, which at the time we wanted to do a temporary custody order. That ended up being that the family was referred to IFS, which is Integrated Family Services, but it didn't actually get anywhere because we didn't actually end up with a custody order. But we did manage to locate the father, so that we managed to actually do a kindergarten registration, which was really positive. The biological father so we worked with the biological father to actually get consent for a whole range of medical and referral to MCH, PSFOs, ECHAs. We ended up doing an NDIS assessment, and then we ended up doing an ECHAS referral after that. So she was able to get ECHAS. I did a referral to Refugee Health Services where she could actually get medical aid. Obviously, we had kindergarten registration enrolment. We did immunisation. And then I also ended up working with the family to actually do a referral to Refugee Legal. This was after a long process of trying to get her legal representation. And I was really fortunate because she was eventually allocated a lawyer through Refugee Legal only very recently. And now she's on the process of actually getting a visa application. So it's just about to start. So to get refugee status, because one of the issues we identified as we looked at transition to school is that because of her visa status, she would have had to pay for school. And that would have been about $14,000 a year. So she wasn't eligible for free schooling. So we've been working with the Education Department now for nearly a year to actually get her into school. We still haven't quite managed that because we're waiting for the visa application to happen. But we're hoping that'll happen soon. She is getting medical aid for her skin condition. And luckily, she's had really good progress in kindergarten. So yeah, so that's been really beneficial for her. We're hoping that she'll be able to get into school soon, which will be a game changer for her. And she's getting a visa application sort of in progress. So yeah, so the outcomes really have been really positive, but it's not ended yet. So we've got a lot of work to do before the case is finalised. It's been an ongoing complex case with lots of different people. Obviously, this is quite a quick summary, but it's such a complex case. I think what this case demonstrates is that when we encounter when a family comes into and does registration for kinder, it's often not so simple. So there's often a lot of complexity behind a lot of these families, and often it's a bit of a Pandora's box as to what we might actually find. And this case, I've been working on this case for nearly a year and a half now. So I've had other cases that have been nearly 2 years. So this is, I think, demonstrates the complexity of the role, but the importance of the work that we do. I think I've already spoken about the next steps, really, but yeah, so yeah, this is, I think for me, has been a really challenging case, but it's been a really interesting learning curve.
Such an extraordinary story. Thank you for sharing, Jo. And I'll echo Carolina's comment about how resilient you and the family and this child must be to keep working on this every day. It's quite extraordinary. And I have to admit that I did not expect to hear stories like this tonight. It's really incredible work that all three of you, and I'm sure many others like you, are doing around Victoria. I would love to throw it open to a few questions. We have a few more minutes. If anyone would like to ask any questions about this amazing work. And while people are thinking, I have one, which is, I would love to know what you hear from people, and you've all expressed a little bit of this, but I imagine when people are coming from other places, the relationships that they have with their local governments there might be quite different. I would love to hear if people talk about that, or if they express kind of anything to you about the different types of relationships. I assume a lot of people don't expect this kind of engagement and must be quite surprised by it. But I would love to hear kind of that a little more about that.
I can share, Bonnie. As a new immigrant, like 17 years ago, I knew that a local government council just issues fines and picks up bins, collects bins, and that's about it. And I had the same idea for a couple of years until I myself started to engage into the community and know about services and take my child myself to play groups. And this is what I hear often from families who have migrated recently is they show surprise and they also show a bit of sign of relief that there is someone that they can approach directly to within the council. No wonder council is definitely have customer service and they can directly contact them. But to have a face out and about into the community who can reach out to them directly and invite them to the services is really crucial for these families who have experienced mistrust and a lot of uncertainty when it comes to local governments from the countries that they have migrated from. And they also fear, they're also fearful of consequences that they might have to face if they do something wrong. So they're in a constant state of fear and would hesitate to even tell their child's medical condition because they would think that this would impact their visa condition. We have come across a lot of families who do not want to mention that or get that addressed or checked from a professional because they think that this will impact their Australian citizenship.
Extraordinary. Tania or Joe, do you have anything to add?
I tend to agree with Madeeha. So I have the same issue, and I think often also culturally, there's a lot of stigma sometimes within cultures around having children with additional needs. And so even when I do school enrolments, I'm often asked by parents that, if there's a member of the community that works in the school, that they want that application kept private, they want the information kept private. And it's really important that we respect that. I think because for the community that has, and for those family members, it has social implications often. But I think visa applications and not identifying additional needs because they're worried about their visa is something that is often a huge barrier to families because they're delaying accessing early intervention or any intervention until they get their permanent visa, and often it's getting quite late, so we've missed a really critical period.
Yeah, interesting. Anyone else in the group that do you have any questions? Carolina, I can see you're typing something. What is one thing that you have learned from being in this role? Great question. Something surprising that you didn't expect?
I think being very resilient ourselves because we're dealing with, as I just want to say that was an amazing presentation, Joe, as well as just understanding the complexities and sometimes things are not so straightforward. So it's going through that process, and sometimes it will take time. It might be a straightforward enrollment, and others may not be a straightforward enrollment. But having those ability to use your sort of emotional intelligence, engage the family and the situation. So I think I've learned a lot, and myself working with Madeeha, we're just dealing with different complexities, and hearing Joe's stories quite profound as well, because you don't think that you'll see those complexities until you take your teacher hat off and actually understand how it is as a family. Another lens I've learnt, as well.
How do you, or what kind of practices do you have in your team to manage some of the sort of emotional complexities or the stress that you might experience in what is a pretty intense role. What sort of things do you do?
We have supervised sessions, like with a registered counsellor that does the supervised visits for our team. So it's our team, support play groups, PSFO, and we quite regularly debrief, because we do have such, not all complexities, but that you might find one that will take a bit of time to actually navigate and make sure that you are actually following the process in their best interests. As Joe and Madeeha were saying, some families from different cultural backgrounds do not want to disclose as much because of their visa status. So that's something we've had to quickly understand. Yeah.
How about you, Joe, in Hobsons Bay? Do you have any particular practices that you use to manage the sort of stress and impact on the team?
Yeah, I think, look, I have professional supervision as well, but I have I think having a close-knit working team that support each other, that I can debrief when I need to. So, because sometimes, my supervision is monthly, so I don't have the luxury. I can't wait to have those conversations. I'm really lucky. I've got a really amazing coordinator who's very available. So, so she'll often, make herself available if there's an incident or there's anything that I need to talk about. But there's a whole team around me. So, and also we work really closely, and we sit close to our maternal and child health nurses. So, I think having people around that are, warm and enriching, I think is probably the word, has really sort of helps me to be grounded. Because there are periods of time where you are encountering and discussing things, and families are telling you things that are quite traumatic. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll go back to to Carolina's question, Madeeha and Joe. One thing that you've learned from being in this role, something that was surprising, something you didn't expect. What can you share?
What I've learned is it was surprising for me that written translations will not work. We make this effort to have so many flyers translated, so many information translated, but then the family that we are giving to might not be able to read at all, whatever the translations are. So it's that one-on-one conversation that's most beneficial with the family, that should happen before any of the process starts regarding enrollment procedures. And the access to free interpreters is such a valuable resource that we can access, that it helps us to navigate those challenges with the families early on, when we can speak or talk to them in a manner that is actually understood by them. And another thing I have learned is never assume. Never assume that a person from a certain background can not read or write, or is not at that literacy level, or never assume that a person who can speak English well and is aware of the system will know everything about the other sort of systems as well. So that's what I've learned. Never assume, and just give that space and time for the family to have that trustful environment where they can share what they are requiring from us. I think that's very paramount, and I would thank Tania as well. We can bounce off each other in these tricky situations. And our wonderful coordinator, Sophie, that we can talk to anytime, and the support that G has provided us as well through MAV. We can always get back to him and ask questions, and he has given us that confidence as well to reach out to them whenever we like, which is so paramount for this role, because we are out there into the community by ourselves sometimes, and we need that support and reassurance that there is someone on our back. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Jo, I'll finish with you. Anything, one thing that you've learned, anything surprising and unexpected?
I think the role itself as, and it wasn't necessarily surprising, but one of the key things for me is relationships is key, and that interaction with community at the coalface, being within community, accessing families where they meet, where is their safe place is the key to engaging families. For me, that's the premise from where I work from. And so I think that's probably been one of the most, it's created probably the most successful environment in relation to the way that we engage families, to especially reaching those families that wouldn't normally engage. So going to where they're at is key.
Yeah, amazing. You all do such extraordinary work that clearly makes such a huge impact in people's lives. I hope everyone will join me in a huge thank you for you sharing your stories tonight and sharing some of the stories of the people that you're working with. I really like to thank people that work in local government for their service to community. And each of you has absolutely blown me away with the incredible dedication and support that you provide to your community. So thank you, each of you, for your service and the amazing work that you do in supporting some of our most vulnerable community members. So I will wrap us up here and just say a very big thank you for this amazing work and everything that you do and for your time tonight. We will share this recording wildly and help more people understand what an incredible service these councils are offering through these programs. But thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.